Oh, hello. I didn't see you sneaking in. Very sly of you. Welcome back. Do you know, of all the things that I enjoy doing, all my little hobbies and foibles, whether it's watching TV, going to the cinema, going to the gym occasionally, socialising, all these things, the thing I think I really enjoy more than anything else is getting stuck into a really good book. There's nothing better than reading a really interesting autobiography or biography, a great story, of course, or something maybe behind the scenes on a favourite film or TV show. It's great. I love reading. I don't do enough of it. I haven't read this year as much as I normally do by any degree. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. It's possibly your fault by making me make lots of YouTube content for you. But there really aren't enough hours in the day. And one of the things I find about books is I often get stuck. If I'm reading a book which I'm really not enjoying, I just get stuck. I don't like not finishing a book. I feel obliged to make the effort. If I bought something that somebody's written, I do feel that I should try to get through it. But if I can't, then it just blocks me and I can't pick up another book until I either abandon that book or finish it. And I've done that fairly recently. In fact, I was reading a book, a very good book called The Ministry of Time. Quite well regarded. I can't remember now off the top of my head who wrote it, but I'm sure I'll put it down here. And it was an interesting story about people from the past who've been rescued by a new government organisation and brought back into the present day. And what follows is a sort of a Big Brother type experiment to find out how people acclimatise from different points in time. And it was very well done. I mean, it wasn't exciting me. It wasn't that sort of book anyway. It was a character study. But I just couldn't get through it. And I was slogging my way through it. And in the end, I thought, nah, I'm going to have to abandon this. So I did. And I've picked up a couple of other books since then. All this is by way of introduction to this particular video. I don't know if it's going to be the first in a series because it depends on how many books I get. But today we're going to have a little wander around my bookshelf of some new titles I've bought recently. So join me. Let's turn the page. Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. My name, of course, is Mr. Paul Mount, as you know. Yeah, I thought I would do a video now on books because I bought a few new books lately. It's that time of year, isn't it? It's the Christmas season's coming up and the publishing houses are wheeling out what they hope are going to be their bestsellers, whether it's new works of fiction, biographies or autobiographies, books about TV shows. They normally go down quite well. I think my tastes are quite broad in terms of what sort of books I like to read. I'm not a book snob. I'm not massively literary. I like to read good books. I like to read something which entertains me. And this is the time of year when you get celebrity autobiographies, often ghostwritten, I'm sure. And you get books, coffee table books about TV shows and films. You get new bits of fiction. It's a mix and match. This is the time when the bookshelves are full of new stuff. And it's very often the big supermarkets, your Tesco and your Asda and so on, that sell the most copies of these books, although I've noticed that local Tesco's lately have reduced significantly the size of their bookshelves. That's a shame, but then I think that goes hand in hand with their lack of interest in physical media. A lot of the supermarkets now don't stock DVDs or CDs or Blu-rays because it's all digital these days. It's unfortunate. So I've picked up several books over the last few days, which will hopefully tide me over the next few weeks and deep into the winter. So I thought I'd just give you a quick run through of the books that I have bought recently. It is a mix and match, and they might give you some ideas of things that you might be interested in picking up if you share similar tastes to me. And if you're watching this channel, I'm assuming that you are. Books that you might fancy reading over Christmas or in the cold winter days. And as I said, it's a collection of different things. Populist, unusual bits of fiction. It is a real potpourri. So I hope you'll find something here that will entertain you and maybe give you an idea, not just for books for yourself, but presents for family and friends over the Christmas period. First book, which I'm actually reading at the moment, and I'm really enjoying this. This is the autobiography of Ben Elton. It's called What Have I Done? It's published by Macmillan, and as you can see, I'm well into this one. I only started it a few days ago. You've probably seen Ben. He's been on TV and radio and all sorts of places publicising his book. And this is a really good read. I'm a bit of a fan of Ben Elton. I was there at the time of the alternative comedy revolution of the late 70s into the early 80s. And this new, slightly more brittle, ruder comedy came along. And Ben Elton was sort of a big part of that. He was involved in writing The Young Ones and Blackadder, one of my favourites, Filthy Rich and Cat Flap. So much stuff he's done over the years. He's gone on to do musicals and plays and about 18 novels, some of which I've read. He's a great writer. He's a very intelligent, articulate man, as you will have seen if you've seen any of the chat show appearances he's made recently. This is a really good book. As I said, I'm about 190 pages into it at the moment, and it's really, really interesting. The thing about the book, though, is it's mainly about his career. He had a very happy and uneventful childhood, I think, and his story is very much based on him growing up, going to university. He left home quite young, left home at about 16, went to college, went to university, graduated from university, went straight to London with a friend of his, and he was lucky in that he was in the right place at the right time when this new comedy explosion was happening. He was friends with Rick Mail, the brilliant, much missed Rick Mail in university, and fell into his comedy writing career almost immediately with a commission to write The Young Ones, and the rest, as they say, is history. And that's the history I'm reading at the moment. It's really good. It's really interesting. He writes so well, not necessarily in a technical sense. I don't think he's technically a great writer, but he can tell a tale. He can tell a story. He has good grasp and good use of language, but it is not great literary stuff. And his story is very much, in fact, what I imagine chatting to him about his life would be like. It's very off the cuff and very casual, but it's so readable and so interesting, and it's just great to be reminded of those times when we had that massive cultural revolution in the world of comedy. Also a part of that cultural revolution, I suppose, is the legendary Kathy Burke. Now, we know her from Harry Enfield comedy sketches. We know her from the comedy series Gimme, 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 who worked with French and Saunders. She won awards for her film Nil by Mouth, which I couldn't quite manage to get through, but she now is mainly involved in theatre, doing stage direction and so on, as she stepped back from acting. This is a book, it's her autobiography, incidentally, A Mind of My Own. This was really on my dance card of one to pick up and read, although I knew it was out. But yesterday, being Saturday, I was heading out to meet a couple of friends for lunch. What a great lunch that was. You must try a Wagyu burger. They're delicious. I heard her being interviewed on Radio 2 by Ramesh Ranganathan, and it was a really nice, chatty interview. He obviously appreciated her and admired her, and she just comes across as so chatty and self-effacing and grateful for what she has achieved over the years. And I thought, I'm going to pick this book up. So I popped into my local Tesco's on the way home, picked it up for £10.50. And it's called A Mind of My Own. It's published by Gallery Books. And I'm really looking forward to reading this. This is probably, I will go on to reading this directly after Ben Elton, because there's something inspiring, really, in reading the autobiographies of people who you admire and whose work you like. And I think that's the key to those sorts of books. I never read biographies or autobiographies of reality show people. There's a big run years ago of the winners of Big Brother would write their life stories in these great big 200, 300 page books. I thought, why would people read stuff like that? I like to read the stories of people who I admire and whose work I've enjoyed. Otherwise, there's no point in reading it or buying it. And the good thing about books at the moment, talking about books, is that they are very competitively priced, especially, I suppose, big new releases get massively discounted. And I've noticed, although I bought a couple of these books from Amazon, even T.G. Jones, formerly known as W.H. Smith, they are selling a lot of these books at the same prices in retail and the shops. If I'd known, in fact, that they were doing that, I would have picked them up from a store rather than getting them from Amazon, because, as I've said before, I like a bargain and I like to get things at the cheapest possible price. But it is good to see that the bookshops and so on are starting to compete with Amazon. So that's Kathy Burke. The next two aren't exactly, in fact, they're not at all autobiographies or biographies, but they are behind the scenes books about TV shows I really like. If you saw my video which I posted last Christmas about the Gavin and Stacey finale, you'll know that I'm quite a fan of that show. And Ruth Jones and James Corden, they've also been doing the rounds talking about this. When Gavin met Stacey and everything in between. It is the true story of the origins of the series and the making of the series, the history of the series, how it grew and developed, how it was cast and so on. And say what you like about James Corden and Ruth Jones, and people often do, it's hard to deny their incredible talent and this astonishing piece of television, which grew from a low budget, barely noticeable BBC Three comedy into a phenomenon. And that's a word which is bandied around far too often in the media, but this really has become a phenomenon. Something like 20 million viewers ultimately watched that Christmas special last year. We will never see its like again in terms of comedy in this country, because comedy, mainstream comedy, is very hard to find these days. Comedy is very much ghettoized now, and issue-led, and it's an unavoidable fact that that's where we are with comedy. We don't get broad family comedy anymore. And I hope that we do go back to that sort of thing. I would hate to think that we will never have a show like Gavin and Stacey again, which is so warm and welcoming and funny, genuinely funny, but very sweet and emotional at the same time. It's a great mix. So I'm looking forward to reading about this. I've heard so much about it over the years, but this seems to be obviously the sort of script extracts and Ruth and James talking about how they put the show together and how they came up with certain ideas. Because you watch it and it seems so beautifully crafted and it seems to be so easy that that's what the story was, but it's obviously a lot more to it than that. So this is going to be a really nice, fun sort of light read. This one as well, I mean, again, you might have seen my video on this series a few months ago because I've tried to do a couple of non-fantasy things. I've tried to slip a few in here and there to see if people are interested. And I did a video on the classic Fawlty Towers because I rewatched the whole series earlier this year. This is John Cleese's Faults and All, my favourite moments, celebrating 50 years of rotten service, as it says there. It always amuses me when you get things like 50 years of this to 50 years of that. Well, what they really mean is 2 or 3 years of it and then 48 years of enjoying it ever since, because it's not continuously in production for those 50 years. But that's just a publicity thing. This should be very interesting. For the first time, comedy genius John Cleese takes a detailed look at the making of Fawlty Towers, the greatest British television comedy of all time, alongside his own treasured role as Basil. And again, this is extremely well illustrated. This is published by Headline Books. Again, full of photographs and behind the scenes bits, set designs from the horse's mouth, from John Cleese himself talking about it. And as I watched the series again this year, this seems like a really nice companion piece. This is one of those sort of books that you just flick through, pick up interesting bits and snippets from. This came out a couple of weeks ago, and it was on my radar to get. It's 25 quid. It was on Amazon, reduced to about, or discounted initially to about 19 quid. And I thought, well, I might get that next month. But then it's limited time offer of 14 quid at the moment. So if you want to pick it up, Amazon's the place to go. Don't know how long that deal's in place, but I think 14 quid is pretty good for a book, which is, quite chunky. It is one of those books that you sort of read and then stick on the shelf and probably don't think about again. But having watched all of Fawlty Towers this year and having so much enjoyed Gavin and Stacey again and again, I think those two books are going to be quite nice, fun little reads with a bit of background information about 2 TV shows I really like. So sue me. Right, next we've got another book which I think is going to be very interesting. This is by Garth Cartwright and it's called Going for a Song, a chronicle of the UK record shop, with a foreword by no less a person than my favourite stand-up comedian, Mr. Stuart Lee. Going for a Song chronicles the entire history of the UK record shop. Award-winning author Garth Cartwright details how record shops across England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland served as oracles for music lovers. This is going to be fun because as a youngster, when I started getting into music in the 70s, I was haunting all the record shops. And you think back to those days, how many record shops there used to be, not just the big HMVs and Our Price and Smiths and Woolies. You had independent record shops, and you still do, they still exist. But I used to go there and spending my pocket money building up huge collections of records, and that sort of led to me becoming a DJ in the 80s up until about 2009, because I had so many records. I just obsessively collected singles and 12-inch singles, albums and so on. So that culture has faded a little bit now, and I think it's a bit more of a niche thing. Records, I know vinyl is on a bit of a resurgence, but I do think that going to record shops is a thing of probably my generation and the generation just behind me. I don't think kids do that anymore because they download and they click and they don't have any particular loyalty to an artist. It's all about individual tracks, because even at my age, I still am interested by the UK singles chart, even though it does not resemble in any way, shape or form what it used to be in the 70s and 80s when it was exciting and fast-paced. It's a very sluggish thing indeed now. But I'm a massive music fan, and I think there's going to be a huge jolt of nostalgia when I get around to reading it. Now it's time for some fiction. In fact, this is all fiction. The last few I've got is fiction. I've absolutely loved the written works of the great Bob Mortimer, of course, partner of Vic Reeves in his classic Big Night Out. And they've sort of gone their separate ways a bit now. Vic has or Jim Moyers, I should call him, he's pretty much retired from comedy and he's very much into art and he needs a sort of a quiet life. But Bob Mortimer has had a second wind in his career. He had some health issues a few years ago, and that led to the excellent Gone Fishing show, which he does with Paul Whitehouse. I think it's the 8th series of that. It's starting tonight as I record this on a Sunday. And it's a really nice, fun, relaxing show. It's just two gentlemen of a certain age and their dog, or Paul Whitehouse's dog Ted, just travelling the country, fishing and having fun and reminiscing and having a good time. It's just nice. It shows that when you get into your 60s, you don't have to sort of don your pipe and slippers. There's still adventures to be had. It's a really nice little series. And Bob has gone on to forge an interesting career as a novelist, as an author. He wrote his autobiography, And Away, which is based on a catchphrase from Gone Fishing, which came out a few years ago. Really good read. And he's now written 3 novels. And I've read the first 2, and they are brilliant. They're really good stories. They're very Bob Mortimer. They're not out-and-out comedies, but they're very witty and very wry and very dry. Then you read them, and if you know Bob Mortimer, you can think, well, this is written by Bob Mortimer. It just feels like his work. And he's written 2 books so far, Hotel Avocado and the Satsuma Project. I think it's the other way around. The Hotel Avocado was the sequel to the Satsuma Project. It's about a dowdy solicitor working in a downbeat London solicitor's office, and he gets involved in a strange murder plot in the first one. And in the second one, it's him and his girlfriend trying to renovate a hotel that's been left to her by her father. Meanwhile, the consequences of the first book are catching up with them, sort of thing. Really funny, really entertaining, real page turners. And he writes these quite quickly because he has a book out a year, his new one, incidentally, which is what I'm getting to. It's called The Long Shoe. It seems to be another sort of slacker thriller type story. It's about Matt happily drifting through life, but he's recently lost his job as a bathroom salesman and the tenancy on his home is about to expire. To top it all, he wakes up one day to find his partner, Harriet, has left him. He's hoping for a change of luck when out of the blue he is offered a job that comes with a cheap luxury flat in Harriet's favourite building, Satsuma Heights, which is incidentally a link to the previous books. He hopes it might be enough to tempt her back. Is she just taking a break, or is something far more sinister occurring? What's his new job really about, and could the purchase of a very long shoe improve his situation? This is just going to be such fun to read. I will probably fly through this quite quickly because I just love his writing, and he creates these believable, slightly dowdy worlds. That's The Long Shoe, which is published by Gallery Books again. Hugely recommended. This is 11 quid at the moment. It's 22 quid recommended price, but obviously the book discounting thing these days is very welcome for people who like reading. So I'd highly recommend that you pick up that if you're a fan, and particularly if you've read his previous 2 books, which, as I said, I really liked. This one I picked up, I think I saw a review of it in a newspaper or magazine. I can't entirely remember. This is published by Corsair Books. I think, again, small publisher. This is called Migraine, and it's by Samuel Fisher. This sounds extremely interesting. This is sort of right up my street. It's a collapse of civilization story, which is about, from what I can gather, a pandemic of migraines. It sweeps across civilization. The snow has melted, but the thaw reveals a world transformed. London's in ruins, its population a fraction of its pre-freeze level. The weather has become wildly unpredictable. Huge pressure swings lead to powerful localized storms. This has led to an epidemic of migraine. When a storm hits, the pain comes along with a wide range of visual and haptic hallucinations named migraine aura. The novel starts with Ellis, one of a very small proportion of the population who don't suffer from weather-induced migraines, being struck by a migraine attack for the first time. After being blinded by hallucinations, he wakes in a ruined bookshop with its former owner, Sam, who pulled him to safety from the storm. No longer excluded from the migraine epidemic, Ellis decides to find his ex-girlfriend, Luna, and win her back. With Sam tagging along, he sets out for the bookshop and heads south. This is, it seems to be right in my wheelhouse, about the collapse of society and somebody wandering through the ruins and desolation and the chaos and trying to find a loved one. It's not a long book, 175 pages, more of a novella, I suppose. But it is, as you will know if you watch this channel, you know I love my apocalypses, apocalypti, and this is going to be interesting, I think. The next 2 are ones I picked up actually in a charity shop quite recently. And I was quite pleased to find this one because it had been on my radar a couple of years ago, but I'd forgotten about it. It's called Leave the World Behind. It's by Rumaan Alam. If that title rings a bell, it might be because there was I think it was a Netflix film a couple of years ago starring Julia Roberts, which again is about sort of a societal collapse. Amanda and Clay are enjoying a taste of the good life when Ruth and GH, an older couple, who claim to own the remote holiday home they're staying in arrive seeking shelter. These strangers say that a power outage has swept the city, but with no phone service and the internet down, the facts are unknowable. What has happened back in New York? Is that holiday home a truly safe place for the families, or are they safe from one another? It's a really good film. I really enjoyed the film. Very bleak in places, and it'd be interesting to read the origin to see what the actual original story was like. So that's another one. This isn't one I'll be reading immediately, but it's certainly one for the winter months. And finally, I also picked this one up. I'm a bit of a sucker for Sherlock Holmes. Not a fan of detective fiction. I don't really do any of the millions of TV detectives that infest the TV screens, but I'm always interested in something to do with Sherlock Holmes. And this is a book called The Secret Documents of Sherlock Holmes. Holmes being out of copyright, of course, anybody can have a go at writing a Sherlock Holmes story if they want to. Might have a go myself. Sherlock Holmes versus the Daleks. It could work. It could work. Anyway, I've read several books written about Sherlock Holmes post Conan Doyle, particularly some written by James Lovegrove, I think his name is. He did 3 books in a row, which were really well written, classic Sherlock Holmes of the era, of the period. They genuinely felt like Conan Doyle. This is a number of short stories, I believe. Secret documents belonging to Dr. John Watson have remained undisclosed in a safe at his bank in Charing Cross for years until now. These are cases of trickery and the uncanny, from the mysterious disappearance of Sir Ainsworth's daughter, along with a horse and groom, to the theft of the Pope's treasured cameos from outside the British Museum, to the repulsive story of the Red Leech and the terrible death of a banker. Can Sherlock Holmes and his trusty sidekick, Dr. Watson, unravel them all? This looks like it's going to be very interesting. It's written by June Thompson, and slightly battered copy, because it's a charity shop, came out in 1997, so it's not a new book by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a number of short stories there, which is the sort of thing you can sort of sit down and think, I'll read one of these now. They're 40, 50 pages. You can fly through these in a couple of hours. So this will be a nice wintertime read as well. That's The Secret Documents of Sherlock Holmes. Don't know if this is still available. This was published by AlisonandBusby.com. I don't know if they still exist. So this is quite an old book now. But I say I picked it up for 50p, and it's a bit of Sherlock Holmes, and you can't go wrong. Right, so those are the books I've picked up in the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's more to come. In a week or so's time, there's the autobiography of Sir Anthony Hopkins, which is coming out. I've also got a copy of that on pre-order. Again, somebody who's had a really interesting life and an interesting career, and I imagine that will be an interesting read. So that's on its way shortly as well. So these are the books that are going to keep me warm in these cold winter months when I'm not making YouTube videos. And there they are. So if you are interested in picking any of them up, I think I've mentioned the publishers and where you can get them and so on. And it's a mix of stuff. It's populist biographies or autobiographies, populist media stuff, and a bit of slightly obscure fiction. That's me in a nutshell. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you're interested in picking any of these books up. And if you have picked any of them, or what you thought of them, or if there's any other books that you've read recently you think that I might be interested in. I'm always interested to hear about that sort of stuff. So leave a comment down below. It's getting cold and windy outside. Now the clocks have gone back. It's getting darker early. It's about 5 o'clock. And it is getting very dark, and it's a real winter's day, even though it's end of October. We're not strictly speaking in winter yet, but I'm looking out through the window and it's cold and it's wet, and rainy, which is wet, and windy, and glad I got me some books. I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.